Let's talk about that interview that Gina Carano did with the Daily Wire, because there was a lot of good stuff that came out in that whole hour interview, and I thought it was pretty revealing. I got a couple other things that have come out as well that I want to touch on, but I think that the culture over at Lucasfilm has really kind of been exposed from all of this, and it's been a really interesting kind of inside look that no one has ever discussed when it comes to this company. And it's really kind of fascinating to get, kind of what we already knew, right? I mean, it's pretty obvious that there's some shady stuff going on at Lucasfilm. And we've talked about this before, the Gina stuff, but it's kind of nice to get it all confirmed, right? And now we know Kathleen Kennedy is firmly in charge. All of those rumors that Favreau answers to nobody, that's not true. Because clearly, from what I gathered from this interview and some other things that have come out, is Favreau tried to save her and help her, and he couldn't because it went over his head. And that's, of course, Kathleen Kennedy. Which means that Star Wars is truly still lost. And I don't know. And it's sad to say that. I mean, it was already lost, right? We were already dealing with that loss before The Mandalorian, and The Mandalorian gave us all a glimmer of hope, and, then all this happened, and it got ruined. But the culture there, I mean, it's clearly abuse. It really is. All the stuff that they did to her, how she talked about the employees that mocked her openly, and we all saw that. We've seen it time and time again with Lucasfilm employees, the way they go after fans. So it's not shocking that they treat their workers that way, right? And then finding out that she had to do all of these PR moves, they forced her to meet with all of these groups, which, it's really telling the double standard. And she points out the double standard. She didn't quite name Pedro. Well, she did, but she said she still has love for Pedro, even though Pedro hasn't stood up for her at all. By the way, Bill Burr kind of has. It was a vague thing. He didn't even name her. Carl Weathers has stood up for her. He played this. Well, he shared this from October 28th, 2019. It's kind of a cryptic thing. Here's the thing that I get from the Carl Weathers thing. Of him doing this, just saying hashtag the Mandalorian, hashtag be peace, right? From him doing this and not saying her name, the same with Bill Burr. It really speaks to the danger that everyone feels there. They must feel like danger from this, right? And she talks about the fear of everyone losing. Everyone is scared to lose their job at Lucasfilm and in Hollywood in general. And we've learned about the double standard. Like, there's been stuff that's come out from insiders talking about how, these PR people advise you to go with anything left, retweet anything left. Always hit those talking points. Avoid anything right. Avoid that. These companies are deathly afraid of Twitter mob. It's insane. Likes are the new money. Because clearly they lost money by ditching Gina. They lost money. The merchandise was selling. They've lost Disney Plus subscriptions. And while it's probably not an amount that's really going to hurt them in the long run, because they're probably getting a lot of them back, let's be honest, they still noticed it. It's a short-term loss, probably potentially a long-term loss, because the show that she would have been in, a lot of people would have tuned in for that, and the merchandise would have sold because people really love her, and they don't care. It's really telling. It was. She kept herself together too during that interview. You could tell she was emotional, and that's likely because this was filmed like 2 days after all that had happened to her. And she talked about how it affected her. And, the biggest stuff to me, though, was that it's obviously a very depressed culture at Disney, and people in Hollywood are scared. And it's not going to change until more people like her stand up against the BS, Until that happens, nothing's going to change. So it's nice to see somebody sticking to their guns and standing up for something that's right. Now, unfortunately, because she's likely under an NDA, she didn't name too many names, but the one that I noticed that kind of stuck out to me, the one thing that I noticed that kind of stuck out to me when she was talking was when she talked about how Lucasfilm was tracking hashtag Fire Gina Carano. And when she talked about that, she did mention that some people went to bat for her, but, you know, obviously it didn't happen. That to me means likely Jon Favreau. And, you know, the tracking of the hashtag, I want to touch on that also. That is pretty interesting. That means, to me, Lucasfilm is obviously watching everything. They're probably going to watch this video. They're tracking anything Star Wars related. And it looks like if the mob does double down on something hard enough, they will get what they want. And it's very unfortunate that a bunch of people on Twitter have the power to just destroy somebody's life like that. You know, most normal people, Disney, don't watch any of the shit on Twitter. It's so crazy to me that they've given so much power to this little mob. And let's be clear, it is a little mob. But they're so loud and dedicated. It's insane. So that was kind of my thoughts on all this. The obvious fact that, you know, Disney is watching everything, that they listen to the mob. There's a culture of abuse there, the way they treat their employees. And, you know, Kathleen Kennedy still runs the show. Now, the other big thing in this interview was when she talked about a story that she could share that would turn all of this around, all this media attention, where she went to bat for somebody for doing something. And it's somebody that doesn't share the same views as her, but it's somebody that she stuck up for. I really wonder who that is. You know who I think that is? I think there's a reason that Carl Weathers shared that tweet that I was showing you to stand up for her cryptically. I think that it's Carl Weathers that she went to bat for. And the only thing that I can think of, and that's from watching this interview, when she talked about how Disney watches everything. If you remember, okay, there was a scene in the episode where Carl Weathers directed an episode. And I think it was the most recent one, the one that Bill Burr was in. I could be wrong on that, but there was one that he directed with Gina Carano, and they were praising each other on social media. But if you remember, there was a hashtag. I can't remember what it was called, but it had something to do with Star Wars, The Mandalorian, because in the episode there was a scene where a guy was standing behind a door, but you could still see his shirt and his jeans. Like half of his body, you could see it. And people were saying, oh, I can cosplay as this guy from The Mandalorian. And people were making jokes and hiding themselves behind doors. And it was kind of funny. But when you take in this whole interview about the abuse and the depressive culture there and how Disney is just a depressing place and how they treat their employees, I bet Disney didn't care for that scene. And they went after Carl Weathers like, how could you mess this up? You've brought us so much negative attention, blah, blah, blah. And Gina probably stood up for him because she was on set working, right? And probably said, no, this is why this happened. It was this reason, whatever. Carl's a great director. Give him a shot. He's fantastic to work with. And maybe that changed somebody's mind. That's just my opinion. I have nothing to back this up other than just looking at everything that's come out, and that's what makes sense to me. So, I don't know. I'm interested to hearing what you guys think. Who do you think it is that she protected and helped, and that could flip this all around? I'd like to hear from you. But anyway, this was a fantastic interview, and it was nice to get all of this information. And I'm looking forward to more coming out because, trust me, more will come out. Anyway, what do you guys think about all of this? I'd like to hear your thoughts. Also, if you would, please like, subscribe, share the video. Make sure you're still subscribed. Hit that notification bell. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace. Also, if you want to help support the channel, check out my Teespring store. There's a link in the description. You can find some merchandise in there that you might want to check out.